Jon, you work for Gary Vaynerchuk. What's it like working for Gary at VaynerMedia?
It's a blast, honestly. Yeah. Do you like blueberries?
What about posting
Gary,
on TikTok?
They opened VCon last year. They both like came on stage and like opened VCon as Gary. So he's flattered as hell by it that he's like impersonators who are good. It's hilarious. What happens in advertising marketing, like it's all happened before. Yes, the players are different, radio, TV, social, etc. But it's fundamentally like entertainment and creativity and advertising and like how enjoyable it is or how interesting it is or how useful it is. Like it's value. And then there are those consuming it. How do we take advantage of this new medium? And you're always playing catch up to what the medium can unlock. And that always continues to repeat itself. We're now like the TikTok era is that new thing. One, as you would say, like one is better than zero. It's like, don't let those obstacles get in the way of at least making something. Anytime there's like this categorically doesn't work or like a hot take like that, it's like almost naive to me because it's like, of course it can work. Like Gary would say, what's the ROI of a basketball? Like for LeBron James, it's $1 billion. For Jon Morgenstern, it's nothing. It's in the operator of it. It's just not working for you for all sorts of legitimate reasons that have to be figured out. And it's a juice worth the squeeze too, by the way, to figure it out.
Walmart versus Amazon.
Ooh, hello, Mr. Roboto.
Hello. When using social media, you should never...
I would say you should never...
You're listening to...
Welcome to What the Tech, your gateway to business strategies and tech secrets shaping today's workplace. Hi, it's Rolando over here.
And Dave Kelly is over here. Hey, listen, Rolando, today we have a very special episode. We've been waiting for today, and I think we've come prepared. We have a true powerhouse in the digital advertising industry joining us.
Mm-hmm.
As a media buying team leader, Jon Morgenstern brings a wealth of experience in the biddable digital and auction-based ads ecosystem. With an impressive track record of executing sophisticated media programs for Fortune 500 brands against diverse sectors, he is responsible for running Gary Vaynerchuk's social media accounts. We'll nerd out and explore the strategies and tactics employed by Jon to oversee a staggering $1 billion in ad spends for VaynerMedia. And also we'll gain valuable insights into the ever-evolving world of digital advertising. And as always, if you want to get the full experience and sound effects, you'll want to listen with your headphones. And if you're listening to this podcast, we'll also be serving up videos that you can watch on our circuitloops.com page.
Awesome. Dave, this is a guest that we've been waiting for a long time. No, he also went on vacation with his lovely wife not too long ago, and hopefully he's fresh and ready for us because we're ready for him. But before we get to Jon, I want to give some big props to a few folks that over the last couple of weeks have done huge effort in helping us out on the Amazon side. And I want to give them some big props. In particular, Jeff Cohen, Nick Gazar, Julie Fink, and Jenna Owens. I owe all of you a huge debt of gratitude. Thank you very much for all that you have done in the last few weeks to help us out. And I really appreciate it. And everybody from the team at Global Tech appreciates what you've been doing to help us. All right, let's talk about Jon. We got a rock star in the house, Dave.
Certainly do. Got to bring him on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring him out of the green room. Jon Morgenstern.
It's me.
All right, Jon.
Hey, Jon.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello. Thanks for coming on the show today. Jon, where are you checking in from today?
I'm checking in from the beautiful area of Weston, Connecticut at my in-laws. Very woodsy. We spent the 4th out here. So we're getting out of here today.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any barbecue or hot dogs or what have you for the 4th?
I was bummed that the hot dog eating contest got a few hours delayed and the conditions, were not ripe for Joey Chestnut.
I missed it.
Record breaking.
Did he not break the record this year?
No, it was like 62. I mean, it was raining the whole day. It was like 62 dogs. I think his record's 76.
Oh my.
Humidity.
Oh,
and all these other play a huge role. So that was a bummer. But no, the 4th is always great. My wife's vegetarian, so We do not go too nuts on hot dogs and hamburgers, but
As no one really should. You know what? I accidentally tuned in yesterday for just a couple of minutes to the Joey Chestnut and that dog eating contest. I had to turn away. It was just too much to see people gorge themselves like that.
oh yeah. Yeah.
It was getting
Look up his
a little
records.
rough.
He's like 50 Guinness World Records for eating. Look them up when you have a few free minutes. They're astonishing.
Hey, not for nothing. I've never called Guinness, but I bet I broke a couple of my own records at one time or another. Close friends and family will say that guy is probably breaking a record with how many ribs that anyone has eaten. Certainly within a family cookout. Hey, John, before we get into it, listen, I need to do a quick read from our sponsor.
You got to pay some bills here, Dave.
Got to pay some bills. Listen, are your clients keeping you awake at all hours of the night? And listen, like many salespeople, you probably use your personal cell phone number for work. But did you know that you could easily use Zoom for both your online meetings and phone calls? So take back the night so that you can sleep better knowing that your phone won't ring at all hours of the evening. Zoom Phone, that's right, Zoom Phone allows you to keep your personal phone number separate so that you can rest more easily and be more effective during your day. And with Global Tech as your Zoom partner, setting it up is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So check them out at tech.global/Zoom to get started today. Back to you, Rolando.
Awesome. Dave, hate those interruptions at dinner. I love it when they go into the proper voicemail for work. So, we've got Jon Morgenstern from VaynerMedia. He works for probably one of I don't know, maybe Gary could tell us, the most celebrated or the most recognized CEO on the planet. I don't know of anybody right now that's more recognized than him. And John could tell us if that's debatable or not. But I want to bring him up. John, you work for Gary Vaynerchuk. What's it like working for Gary at VaynerMedia?
It's a blast, honestly. I've been at Vayner just over 8 years. It was 8 years in May. And so our relationship has evolved a lot. And Gary definitely, as we all, who values like putting in the time and the months, years, as I've been around longer and longer, the layers of the onion, I keep going deeper on with Gary. And as many folks who know him best say, it's like the closer you are to Gary, like the more you love him. His marketing instincts are just pure. It's like, in Good Will Hunting, when Matt Damon's character is talking about, Mozart could look at a piano and he could just play. And like, that's what Will Hunting's saying that he can do basically with all subjects. Gary is that with marketing.
And I heard you say in another podcast recently that when you all sit in a conference room with all the folks, all the heads, all the trusted advisors like yourself, he'll just come out with something so simple yet effective, even though he's not a math guy, and so profound that you guys are scratching your head and then realize, oh yeah, that makes sense. And that he does it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's like a thinking fast and slow sort of thing. Daniel Kahneman's book feels like a type 1 system, whichever the one is that's just like automatic. It's just like, boom, has that sort of quality to it. And it's the result of a crazy number of hours just like living in the weeds, doing it.
He's always plugged in, like that brain has got to be
always
going.
Yeah. So it's fun to learn. He gives a lot of autonomy to a lot of us, but also like wants to live the thesis. And so he like keeps, top down. The vision remains on point because it's so easy to get complacent and like just like buck to the status quo and all that sort of thing. So it's a good check and balance.
Is he always bringing the same energy that we see on social media with all the clips? Is he like that in the office, with the folks, the day to day? Is he bringing that same level of energy, or is it just reserved for the social media side?
I mean, he absolutely has the same sort of energy. I would say that social media is the more like dialed up to 10, kind of like characterized version. And he talks about this too, where it's like the most energized, the most like communicative, enunciative. So, it's a little bit more like, yeah, you're in the office. He's still very much Gary. He's still like the guy you see on social media, but he's more subdued. That's the word I was looking for.
He's not on, maybe he's on 8.5, 7.
Yeah, exactly. And he has like the natural energy thing, like for sure. I've seen him do like, especially around VFriends launches and things like the multi all-nighters, like he can still go ham on the hours when he needs to. His calendar's down to like the 5-minute level, 3 admins.
Wow.
He's in the office or going to client meetings. It's like, clockwork. But he's always meeting with new employees. He always wants to meet every single new employee at Vayner. living the thesis, Honey
Living
Empire,
the
as we call it, of
right,
VaynerMedia.
right.
I love to hear that he's kind of living that way. We share his videos and have been sharing for years. One of the things that I'm always impressed by with Gary is he's not afraid to record anywhere, from his mobile device in a noisy environment, from his laptop in a quiet environment, in a
Yep.
produced style with lighting. You know, he's always kind of given us that motivation of just start recording. You know, don't overplan it. Just, turn on the camera, start recording, regardless of where you are. And we try to do some of that, but watching him do some of that, it's like, all right, experiment with new things. It doesn't have to be in the studio with the best microphone and the best lighting. And sometimes you're out and about. I was actually on a vacation recently and I had a new product, and it was just a perfect environment to capture a demonstration. And I hadn't done a demo like this before, kind of in public on a ship and all those noises. And I kind of thought about Gary. I'm like, Gary wouldn't be afraid to just take out his phone and start recording and talk to himself, and I had people kind of walking
Yeah.
around me and they were like, what is he doing? But I think he sort of has normalized that within the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some videos of him like on a plane, like in his phone audio, and you can like barely hear it. And it's still, yeah, if the value's there, if it's useful, yeah, no, big time. Yeah. One,
That's cool.
as he would say, like one is better than zero. It's like, don't let those obstacles get in the way of at least making something. Don't worry about it being like this level of professional on pointness when you're just getting started. Like one is better than zero.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we'll do stuff like he'll do voice messages and just text them to me to try, boosting on Spotify Ad Studio as like digital audio. Just like record on his phone, like, hey, can you throw this up? Put, some media dollars behind it and target these people, and then let's measure it this way. It's like that scrappy.
Wow, that is scrappy. He's not afraid to mix it in and really just push the envelope. And that's kind of what I asked you next about from a pushing the envelope perspective. What at the moment would you say is the most exciting thing or you're most interested in that you're nerding out on right now?
Yeah, I've had my little mini foray, including things like this, into creatordom, which has been fun. It started off as for the VaynerMedia handles, like a bunch of us, Vayner's PR crew led by Harriet Flory, who's awesome, featuring more Vayner leaders on like the social accounts in general. And I did a post or two. It was like, what are the things you're most looking forward to in 2023? Then it was posted. You see it do decently well. You see the comments come in. You're like, I should reply to these comments. Like, this is exactly what I know to answer. Like, this is my thing. So you reply to some comments. You see a clear topic emerge in a video you want that makes sense for you to do. You do it. And once you get a little taste of not virality, but just like,
Yeah.
when you're adding value to people, getting DMs, getting views, it's
And
exciting.
I've seen that. And I've seen that, John, on your Instagram, for example. I went back and looked at it, and it was just mostly your personal posts, like, what you do, and you go here and there. And then you shift into, like, it was a lot more social media, Vayner stuff, tactics, hacks, and then it seems like that's where your lane, you are at the fun in your lane, or you like you said, you have a taste of what people are really curious about that they want to ask you.
Yeah, I've only been doing it like 6-ish months, and it's been fun. And like Gary said this in a talk recently, like paid media, which is obviously my core thing, has papered over like so much poor strategy or like poor creative, especially in social, and like earning the views organically versus just buying them with paid. It's like training at altitude sort of thing. And so it's been really cool. I have more empathy than ever, honestly, for creators and like ad agency creatives too. So that's been cool. So that's one that's like top of mind and like day to day I'm tinkering and playing around. But obviously AI is one. As much of it's almost cliche at this point, and it was ridiculously huge at the Cannes Lion Creativity Festival in France 2 weeks ago.
And that's
now.
where Gary Vee mentioned that, by the way. I saw that clip.
Yeah,
At the one you're talking
where he kind of
about.
like counterpunched it, being like, "Hey,
Yes.
like it's the first inning. Many of the entities here are not tech companies per se, but he believes in it too, big time. But it's kind of like, hey, think about where the consumer is at this second versus the potency of things." And he said in the talk, like the industry is very romantic about yesterday, loves to talk about tomorrow, and like under appreciates the now, the today, and social media, things like this. The TikTokification of all things is like still the creator economy. This second is still like massive.
And growing.
So that-
I saw your post about that. The creators are now, especially with Amazon, jumping into the creative space and how you can't sleep on that anymore. Whereas maybe a couple of years ago it was just, some creators over here doing their thing.
Yeah.
Big companies are getting behind this as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the kind of evolution from influencers to creators and what it kind of means for like the modern creative agency. And Rob Lanoy, our chief creative officer, he's been like steering the department in this new direction of it's going to look different. It's not going to be like your classic Madison Avenue shop of like copywriters, art directors, creative directors to then make the thing, the whole production ecosystem tied to the content. The cost of making content has to go down a lot. There has to be a way higher volume of it. It has to be with increasing numbers of, social, digital, TikTok natives.
And that's a push-pull, right? You have a lot of debate and a lot of people, they want to scale. I mean, this is our own challenge. We want to scale, but native on the platform gives you some benefits. Pushing it everywhere gives you some other benefits. And so what do you see when you're talking to clients that, they come to you guys and say, here's the budget, $10 million. What should we do?
Yeah.
Native, everything, or we're just going to blitz everywhere using, the apps and the API stuff?
Yeah. I mean, this is where it's cool having a whole media side of the house and creative side of the house. And not that every single one of our clients does both with us, but the majority do to some degree. Or like all social, creative, and paid social is kind of like the wheelhouse. But these days, the fastest growing channels for us are things like retail media, connected TV, all of those sorts of things. But it's funny when we get like classic pure media, RFPs and briefs, and it is that kind of like, here's 10 million, here's our business objective. What should we do? And it's kind of like, okay, here's the media dollars, here's the objective, here's some audience insights, like plan it. And we're like, well, what's the creative going to be that we're serving on these channels? And the industry is still so much in like this siloed insert creative here to the media plan. It's planned in a vacuum. And us, it's like, what's the creative? And then they're like, what do you think the creative should be? And a lot of that's where the magic we think happens, the alpha, quote unquote, happens. So we never want to be divorced from the creative side of the house and what the assets are. And obviously, if we can impact them, great. If not, that's a very common scenario for us too. But yeah, it's always a combination of like client comfortability with change. But yeah, it's always a level of like, hey, here's the existing media mix that is what was delivered last year, how it was measured. That's almost always some form of starting point. Even if there's collective agreement, the client, us, the platforms, that it's way off. You only want to steer these, especially in Fortune 500 land, steer the ships so dramatically. And it depends on the CMO and again, how aggressive they want to be. Sometimes they're like, Gary always talks about the industry's at a 2. I come in at a 10, hoping to move it to a 5. And sometimes, client marketing works are like, no, we want a 7. We're like, amazing. But you're always navigating like the yesterday, the backwards looking, regression analysis side of things, media mix modeling side of things, and the tomorrow.
And that's the hard part. How do you measure success? Do you have your own measurement for success? And I want to get back to the creatives in a moment, but I want to ask you, because you're touching on something that is, as a business owner myself, you're always measuring the ROI. What are we getting for it? And so do you redefine success, or is the client coming to you with the metric for success when you're engaging, a new client comes on board?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. They of course expect us to help dictate what some of the KPIs, key performance indicators are, our measurement recommendations. But depending on the client, if it's like a huge, complex, financial services company or company that is like deeply in the CRM, first party data management game, they'll of course come with like CDP, DMP, like some existing ad tech infrastructure. And sometimes it's pretty prescriptive and like, hey, this is what we do. And a whole separate team runs it. So like you'll be working through it, things like closed loop measurement with those partners and other things come up. But they'll always want our input, at least for like social, digital, real time media metrics, what can be tracked in near real time. Well, obviously anything like lead capture related, lead scoring, obviously conversions around purchases, order value, all those sorts of things. We'll want to have all that hygiene in a perfect place, privacy, conversions, APIs, all that good stuff. And other than that, there's also examples where they're like, hey, we had this media mix model a few years ago. We imploded it. We want to start fresh. We have this brand tracker that like wasn't, our brand tracker would say we were doing better and better in terms of like top of mind awareness and brand equity. And our business was going down the entire time. So we're detonating everything. What do you think? And then we have our like, and then we have our like, from the ground up sort of measurement stack. We have a whole analytics crew. Shout out JC Bonilla, our chief analytics officer. But yeah, it'll be some form of cross-platform real-time dashboarding with the best possible down funnel tracking you can have everywhere. Conversion pixels, app SDKs, conversions
So you
APIs, et
so you
cetera.
could be as sophisticated as the client wants to be. So you can measure it in their terms, or they can come into you and you say, "Hey, look, this is the way we think we should look at this based on your objectives."
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Aw-
And that there'll be
Awesome.
some level of third-party specialists and, in-house client stuff, in-house Vayner stuff, and everything in between.
I want to get back to the discussion on creatives because the future of creatives is changing. And just even 6 months ago or a year ago, some of what's available today is just mind blowing. And I know that you follow the deep fakes and generative AI and how it's evolving, the ability to be hyper realistic. I think that's the terminology creatives use nowadays. Hyper realistic in what you're delivering is unreal. I think the next evolution is how can then I use this character to create the entire video? And I think that's the next bridge to get to because you could do this live, right? You're the actor and it overlays, in this case, Tom Cruise's face, which is what we're showing here on the video for those that are following along. And it's just an amazing time. Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a wild topic. I could talk about this for hours. There's actually a good Black Mirror episode on this recently. I don't know if you've seen the new season at all.
I have not.
The episode's called Joan is Awful. And like Selma Hayek is licensing her deep fake for this like Streamberry. It's like this fictitious Netflix. Netflix is very like kind of self-deprecating
Yes.
on it, which is pretty funny. But yeah, there's the world of, oh, hey, you're Tom Cruise. You can't do a certain film. They want to use you. You let them license your digital likeness to quote unquote star in it, and like what ultimately happens there. And the same with like brand deals. You like license quote unquote them, even though they might not be involved. And it creates a lot of heady questions with it. And so there's obviously, that world and if it will materialize. I mean, think about like the Tupac hologram concert. I think it was Coachella years ago. And like what could happen there? And it's kind of cool. But, and John Mulaney was talking about this on a Hot Ones episode. He was like a recent guest, and it was about, the writer's strike, like the Writers Guild and how they're on strike, to Warner, to Netflix, to all the big studios and everything. And a decent part of the why is the threat of AI and these writers just becoming more and more cutthroat. AI possibly even like lifting a bit of what the writers have done and using it as an input potentially, but a lot of.
At the end, you still need
kind of big macro
creativity,
questions.
though, right, John? Even though you have that image, you would still need, even with ChatGPT, it can do some of the lifting. And I've heard Gary talk about this.
Yeah.
The fact that it's more of an assistant. So if you're a writer, you're creative, sometimes the hardest part is the first sentence or the first line. But if you have 10 ideas based on what your input is, now that, oh yeah, I like idea number 2, let's expand on it, right? So it can be just as powerful when used as an assistant to boost that creative process rather than it's going to get rid of everybody.
Totally. Like that's, complementary, augment, enhance humans and how to like take a lot of the most menial, tedious stuff, the least like stuff and handle that. And so you can be more purely creative is very exciting. And there's that whole side of things. There's the marketing implications of that. But there's also the piece of like, and Mulaney was saying this on the show, this human factor and like human nature. If there's a stand-up set and just the mere fact of knowing an AI wrote it versus a human being, will it still be as funny knowing an AI wrote it?
It's to be determined yet. I mean, we're still
totally.
we're still in the first inning or the first set of a tennis match, right?
Yes. Oh, completely.
So there's a lot more script that needs to be written in order for us to determine where we're going to get there or what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife, we were debating this. She works at ARK Invest, Kathy Wood's ETF company. And so she knows her stuff big time, especially in like self-driving, autonomous mobility. She's a beast. But they were debating it. And she was mentioning how like when Microsoft Word first came out, you had to cite like, oh, hey, this document was written using Microsoft Word. because there's that novel and weird, and how
Yeah.
like with AI, there's like that sort of thing happening. And like now, obviously, you wouldn't think twice about it. It's like, yeah, duh, this is ingrained in everything. And it's like, how much of the AI is just that? It's like the internet. You wouldn't say like, I use the internet for this. It's like, of course you use the internet.
Source internet.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of that. But the biggest thing is going to be the rights side of it, rights owners.
I think that's got to be
If you-
sorted to get all
yeah.
the legal stuff out. Just like when
Big
we
time.
had e-signatures, right? We didn't have electronic documents to sign for. People wanted that for years. And now
Mhm.
there's laws that just, you know, you do a DocuSign. It's just as good as you signing it. Eventually, I think once the lawyers and the attorneys, and in this case, creatives and actors and people in the creative process are allowed to know what legally you can do and represent, I think it's going to clear the path for all of this.
For sure. For sure. All that stuff has to go down.
Absolutely. I want to ask you something. I want to jump into something. I want to switch gears with you a little bit. We have a little mashup that I want to show you because I want to get a little nerdy, peel this onion a little bit. You're the
Let's do it.
master strategist over at VaynerMedia, and I want to understand a little bit more of what we're seeing because it may not be so obvious to some folks, but I've got some questions on specifics about it. So Ori, go ahead, roll the mashup that we have for John.
If you're in your 20s, watch this video. For me, the number one thing at this age that you have to do, someone who's 22 years old knows the following. Yo, TikTok kids, listen to me. You want to know the answers? Are you 54 and thinking that you're wrapped up because you have 24-year-old children? The biggest mistake 18 to 22-year-olds make is their relationship with time.
Think about taking risks in your 30s. I'm turning 32 in November.
I'm a fan of it.
I messed up in my 20s.
Spending any time judging yourself about your 20s is a waste of time. I actually believe one of the biggest reasons the world is anxious is we've gone away from accountability. I think for a lot of people, college is right. I was a D student. D.
Interesting.
I love. He's just so raw with emotion. It's just unbelievable. But when I started really like just examining, I'm like, he is specifically saying, "Hey, 20-year-old. Hey, 50-year-old."
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I asked my team was, let's look at our numbers and demographics. And when we looked at TikTok and we looked at Instagram and we looked at Pinterest, no matter what the creative was that we delivered, the audience always skewed younger, even though our target demographic for what we're selling is not 18 to 30, it's 30 plus. Right. So my question to you on that is, are we supposed to, I mean collectively creators, or I should say B2B companies. Now, this is what I'm directing you at. Are B2B companies who know their target audience is older, but the folks consuming their own content are younger, should they create content that is algo specific? Because I'm saying, hey, 20-year-olds, and we know the algorithm's going to pick up on that. Or should we be delivering content that's for our target audience, even though the demo consuming the media is not the folks that we're going after?
This is a good one. This concept of like creative is the new targeting is like really gaining momentum, and Meta's talking about it more. And it certainly is by definition the case in the organic platform algorithms, like when you post something on TikTok, Reels, et cetera, because you can't, there is no paid element. And so like depending on who the algo thinks will like this the most is where it goes. So creative is the targeting. I mean, there's obviously like the hook side of things, and Gary is a mastermind at all of that. And, you know, his team is always doing tests of all sorts. And at some point in time, I'm sure they figured out that giving an exact age year, just in general, like, hey, 22, 54 versus, hey, millennials, hey, boomers, worked better, as well as the audience analytics of, hey, on TikTok, I skew the youngest. On Facebook Reels, I skew the oldest. So let's make sure we have a content strategy that kind of maps and delivers to those people while also trying to, you know, expand into other territories. It's all really smart. But for you guys, there's this interesting challenge, and we see it with a lot of brands too, which is you're talking about your business, you're pushing out organically, you're hoping that, and it certainly happens to some degree, that the recommendation algos hit your target because it's like there's the nexus of, yeah, they consume it, they're into it, and you deliver it. But to what extent are the algos doing that, and how much of it is the algorithm just isn't that great, and like you have to reverse engineer all of its flaws to try to hack it and force it to the folks you wish? Or actually, how perfect is the algorithm, like a TikTok, where like whoever it serves it to is who was most resonant, even if you're talking about your B2B realm, by definition, that it went to younger people, is that like you have to rejigger it to reach older people, and then like you will. And so there's always this like, how much of it is double down on the content we have, but algorithm hack, and how much of it is like, hey, we really need to think through and really like try new things related to how we style our content, maybe even where to post it. Because sometimes people are just on Instagram and TikTok, and it's like, hey, you skew older, Facebook Reels should be like your number one, or try YouTube. It's like the platform mapping, understanding of any algo flaws, as well as when you need to kind of like shift gears and try different things when you're just like, we just still keep hitting younger and younger folks on this platform. And we know this platform has old people. So what should we do? And that could be the unlock. And the answer, by the way, is also always and, as we would say at Vayner. Like,
Yeah, it's not an
what
or.
Gary's doing with the hey 54, hey 22, like, of course do that. And like, there very well may be a hack at any given time in terms of how LinkedIn picks that up or Facebook Reels picks that up versus other platforms that, you know, look more deeply into the video. But also try or look at all of your content, which ones, if any, really did scratch the itch to older folks, and then like reverse engineer the why it did and double down on that.
When you're analyzing some of these videos and you're looking at who is watching, who's viewed and consumed this, are you ever surprised that you're creating something, you're introducing it, hey, 20 to 28-year-olds do this? Are you ever surprised when you go back to the analytics and seeing, hey, this hit right on? We brought new people in from an older demo. Maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. What's surprising to you when you write the creative?
It's super fun. I mean, you have like your hypotheses, and you have like from reading the algorithmic tea leaves and your audience insights, like what you've seen some success with, you try to harness what's worked from it. And that's fun. It's always very satisfying when you have a thesis to reach a certain audience, you do it and it works. I would say that like it's pretty close to call it like 60-40 of like your design targets and playing it out and like cracking the code as intended, and the 40% being like happy accident of, we see this all the time, of like you're trying to go younger and you actually end up going older than ever, because there's something about like older people wanting to consume content about youth and like weigh in on it and like, comment or something that then triggered the algo. So like there's so many counterfactuals that happen in all these ways too. And the best example of this is like when people screw up making content and post it by accident, and then that content ends up doing the best because people are like, oh my gosh, they didn't post the final version. Like I'm seeing a glimpse into the process. There's a virality of that, but then there's also like the authenticity and realness of it. Yeah, we have this concept called like the mystery box. We have cohorts, like design targets we're making content for, and they're like very nuanced, like 15 to 25-year-old, like diehard Dodger fans in LA and LA County that are also into like street culture is like one example of that sort of cohort that will be relevant for a certain business to crack. We'll always have like a mystery box cohort of just like, hey, don't not make a piece of content you want to make for the brand that's on strategy if it doesn't like directly hit one of these cohorts, because getting out to the open, it might actually do a great job of hitting them or unlock a new cohort. Like the algorithms can help unlock like happy accidents all the time.
Right.
And like there could be a content best practice, a hack that works, but then everyone flocks to it. And then a week later, by definition, it doesn't work because it's oversaturated in the feed. So it's like, you can only ever try to like get so prescriptive on what exactly worked and why, because then it's like, okay, but people moved on. There's a whole different thing going on anyway. So, you know, while you're figuring that out,
these things have a short half-life. Is that what you're saying?
Very
Like,
short.
wow. Well, you know, speaking of half-lives and short half-lives and the future of what's happening and that to the minute, there is a special guest, John, that wants to come in and ask you a question. There he is. Special guest making an appearance here. What's your question for Johnny Mo?
Hello, John. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Roboto.
Hello. All right, so I have a simple question here. As someone who advises Fortune 500 brands, can you fill in the blank for me on this statement? When using social media, you should never...
I would say you should never write a platform off as quote unquote not working, especially the platforms that like you know your audience is on. Like any social platform can work, but either if it's an ads pay to play game or organic, it's just like you haven't found a strategy that's worked. Like Gary would say, what's the ROI of a basketball? Like for LeBron James, it's $1 billion. For Jon
Yeah.
Morgenstern, it's nothing. It's like, it's in the operator of it. It could be, things could be all sorts of things. So like anytime there's like this categorically doesn't work or like a hot take like that, it's like almost naive to me because it's like, of course it can work. There's like huge businesses happening in your sector that are being built off the backs of this. It's just not working for you for all sorts of legitimate reasons that have to be figured out. And it's a juice worth the squeeze too, by the way, to figure it out. I would say the second using social media, you should never like take your eye off the ball if you're trying to drive your business. Like people that just start getting into trend chasing and like virality or going on a platform when like in reality their target customer is like pretty much not there at all. Don't lose the script of like what you're ultimately trying to do is another one, I would say.
Wow, wonderful. Thanks, Mr. Roboto, for joining us today and posing your question to Jon. Thank you.
Right. Bye, guys.
Appreciate that. You got into you started just scratching the surface a little bit here with some secrets, and I want to jump into that with you. So go ahead, roll that, Ori.
Well kept secrets, gotta keep them safe and sound well. Kept secrets are just like diamond.
Funky.
Jon, you came ready to play today, and one of the things that I really want to just uncover are some of those things that are under the radar, that are not getting the attention they deserve, and especially for smaller brands. You talked about that earlier. What are some of those secrets that can be deployed from those larger brands that you guys are talking to at VaynerMedia on a regular basis?
Yes. That's a good place to start on this. So the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's a quick Wikipedia. It's this like psych bias where if you are not knowledgeable on a given topic, you have a bias towards assuming that like anyone else around you, especially people that say that they're fluent in a given topic or knowledgeable, a bias to believe that they know more than you, including people that like any stranger, whether or not their experience maps to it. And it just goes back to like human evolution, mimesis, and just like going with the herd and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
And that really applies. We see this a lot with like small brands versus big brands of like, oh, well, the big brands putting like media dollars and resourcing aside, that's a whole different conversation. Like the creativity they have access to, the paid media chops they have access to are like, we'll never be able to compete. Certainly on like a Meta or Google or Amazon, you absolutely can. It's a game of like practitionership, who lives the closest to the keyboard. Often like upstarts can be more agile and be quicker to things than big brands can. And some of the best, very best purebred media buyers I've ever met, like start off doing it on their like family small business, and like every dollar had to work like 50. And so they became like incredibly adept at it.
And is it because they're in the trenches? It sounds like if it's because they're in the trenches and they're living and breathing it.
They're in the trenches and living and breathing it, learning. And it's like every dollar has to work so hard versus when you just have like a huge war chest of dollars. And yes, of course it has to be on strategy and work hard, but the level of depth that sort of SMB person can get into can be really valuable.
No doubt, no doubt. You'd also talked about this with us earlier about that history repeats itself, and somehow learn from history. And there's some insights in that. Go ahead, share what you had to say about history repeating itself.
What I mean by that is like what happens in advertising marketing, like it's all happened before. Yes, the players are different, radio, TV, social, et cetera, but it's fundamentally like entertainment and creativity and advertising, and like how enjoyable it is or how interesting it is or how useful it is, like its value. And then there's like those consuming it. And those are the basic ingredients where in the golden age 50s and 60s, you know, you would have folks like General Mills, they would like Rocky and Bullwinkle, General Mills created in exchange for the commercial rights in between the content, commercial breaks during the content.
Right.
And it was much more seamlessly tied to the content you were watching. An extension of that product placement was like epic back in the day. And it was all very like consumer oriented and rooted in adding value. And I think that in recent years, the eye has been taken off that ball a little bit in terms of like, oh, the media math, the targetability, the arbitrage, you know, outperforming the market, these ad auctions versus.
I've heard you say that before about the arbitrage. That's the gameplay, and to some extent, finding where you can stretch that dollar, right? If you're talking about paid media, If you're going to only get, I don't know, 1,000 clicks and it's going to cost you $100 here, you can get 1,000 clicks and pay $25 over here and just get the same value, right? Isn't that the play right
Yes.
now with
Well,
value?
that's a lot of what I and we focus on, and that's like short term important and gives you an edge. But like long term, if you're not building brand, having a value exchange, even if you have those arbitrages, like you won't be able to build the biggest building. So it's like a balance of it. That makes sense.
It makes sense. You're playing the long game. If I were to paraphrase what you're saying, and just doing CPMs is not going to get you the long game, right?
Yes, exactly. And also, like here's a great history lesson. Like the first TV commercials in the waning of the radio era were like radio spokespeople just reading the same script but in front of the camera, because they were just like, how do we take advantage of this new medium? And you're always playing catch up to what the medium can unlock, and that always continues to repeat itself. Where now like the TikTok era is that new thing where brands are still trying to do like digital video the old school way in a way that can no longer compete as well. So again, this happened many times throughout history.
And it's crazy because probably the folks that are making the decision when they were getting started, that's the way they knew it. And that's when, here, I want you to use this, right? Because that's how it worked for me. But
yeah, exactly.
And so, but when we're looking at this new landscape, it's still not too late. And I think this is the other point you're talking about with us earlier, that the best time to start with that new strategy is now. Like it's never too late.
Yes, totally. Like there's always this idea of like, oh, we missed TikTok, or like now the field is heated up so much in this place. Like, is it even worth it? It's like, yeah, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. It's like, be on it in as many of these places where your consumer is and where you can reach them and drive business as possible. Be unromantic about as they change, and don't be like pissed if you jump on and then 6 months later, like it is no longer a thing. That's part of the game. But
it's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, exactly. Like there were people in the 70s saying like, oh, TV is overplayed out. And people look back now being like, oh my God, the 70s hit TV, like you couldn't lose. I wish we like quadrupled down then. There's always those tensions. I thought I was late as hell to TikTok. I started doing it like 6 months ago when Gary was talking about it in 2017. Not at all.
Yeah, and it's working for you. I love the lives that you do on TikTok and whatnot, because they're just so like rich with information. You know, I'd be selfish if I was Gary. I'd be like, hell no, John, you're not going and talking about these secrets and giving them away. No, we're keeping it to ourselves.
Yeah.
But it seems like Gary encourages you guys to do that.
Yeah, within reason. I mean, and he built the model of like adding value. You know, the hard part is execution. Ideas are cheap. So it's like, hey, post 4 TikToks a day. That's like a secret I'm sharing. It's like the whole hard part is doing it well.
Hell yeah, that is. Yeah, that's the
all
hard part.
Reason. Yeah. You know, especially when clients are paying for certain strategies, we have to be, for everything I share, there's much more that is under the surface, not shared. But no, Gary's cool about this sort of stuff. He built the model in many ways.
He kicks ass too. And so I know your time is precious and we want to wrap up with you here. Let's go to that rapid fire so we can get that out of the way. I know John, maybe Gary's on the other line saying, get to work and stop playing around on podcasts and whatnot. So I'm going to give you,
Let's do it.
I'm going to give you a word and I want you to tell me what's in your head, what the feeling is, whatever you think. So there's 5 of these. So creating content and niching down versus posting whatever you like.
It's the nexus of both. If posting what you like, it usually has a niche to it, maybe not. You need both. Like the more specific you can be, I think that's valuable. I saw a post the other day about someone who had like a soap opera blog, became a millionaire off a soap opera blog.
Whoa.
But you have to love it too. So it's like, you have to like the niche. You have to have the natural energy. Otherwise you'll give up. So
gotcha. Ultimate throwdown here between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Who's going to win in the octagon? Your prediction.
If it was in the metaverse, Zuck would have a huge advantage. I mean, Zuck seems like he's a lot younger, and he really trains for this stuff. Yeah. Then
it ends with whoever ends up bloodied in the nose first. That's what I say.
Yeah, they're both way too valuable to actually get hurt. So I hope that they have lots of pads.
But how does this affect the stock prices before they even step into the ring?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, It still seems totally not real, but who knows? It would be
Who
like the
knows?
biggest pay-per-view in history, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally. Walmart versus Amazon.
Ooh, it's interesting. I would say that like Amazon has evolved and built out like a more of a Death Star quicker, especially as it pertains to full funnel digital ads.
Mhm.
But Walmart is like slowly but surely catching up, and like Walmart Connect is really, you know, has a lot of like the core of what the advantage that Amazon had. But M&A activity will be so interesting, or whatever happens where, you know, does Walmart acquire Roku, or does Disney acquire Walmart? Does Disney acquire
Mhm.
Target? You know, like all that stuff is kind of percolating in this crazy way.
Yeah,
playing out
media
in
and
CTV.
commerce are going to converge. It's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, it's going to be interesting. I'm fascinated by that. And the last one I think is end on a real light note. Who is the best Gary Vee impressionist? And I have a sample video, and you tell us which one's the best. Go ahead, Ori, roll that.
Playing outside, I gathered up a bunch of snow and converted them into snow cones. Flipping it on eBay.
Yo, what up, my guy? You making content?
Little, yeah.
Where are you posting? Are you posting on LinkedIn?
I'm not posting on LinkedIn yet, but I know I need to hit it.
Underpriced attention, bro.
I'm sorry, Gary. I apologize.
Are you posting on MySpace?
No, not yet.
Nostalgia, bro.
Where the have you been, bro?
Gary, I have been here the whole time.
Yeah?
I've been in training camp. You know, I've been focused with my team.
Yeah.
so-
Are you making content? Bro, like, college is school, okay? That okay? You do you love, okay? What do you love, my man?
I love NFTs.
Oh, bro.
Like, do you have any advice for me on how to just like any advice?
How old are you? You get so much time, okay?
I love the second guy. He cracks me up more personally, like the high voice.
Yeah. Oh, he can't
like-
see that.
Yeah. Do you like blueberries?
What about posting
Gary,
on TikTok?
They opened VCon last year. They both like came on stage and like opened VCon as Gary. So he's flattered as hell by it that he's like impersonators who are good. It's hilarious.
I love it. I love those guys. But yes, Nima Naz is what he goes by
Yes.
on TikTok. And no,
He's hilarious.
he's hilarious. Hey, John, I want to just open the mic here as we close. Anything you want to say, anything you want to leave us on, if folks want to follow you and, you know, they want more insights, anything, what do you want to say?
Thanks for having me on. It's been cool to start doing the content thing a little bit and like living like the podcasting, video organic posting thing. It's hard. I have more respect and admiration than ever for everyone doing it in the trenches. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep posting on TikTok, at least somewhat consistently. Everyone who engages, asks comments, messages, asks for like advice on things. That's always, you know, enjoyable for me to try to add value on when I can. But other than that, hope you guys have a good summer. Thanks for having me on.
Oh no, we've loved it. And John, he's under Johnny Mo in TikTok, puts out a lot of good stuff there. There was 20 more things I wanted to ask you, but I would extend an invitation for part 2 because there's a lot more we couldn't get to because of time. And we'd love to have you whenever you can come on again.
Awesome. That sounds good to me. Yeah, there's so much going on.
And I'm sure 6 months from now, there'll be some new stuff that we haven't even scratched the surface. So we've been talking to Jon Morgenstern of VaynerMedia, head of investment at VaynerMedia, works for probably the most celebrated CEO in history. I'm going to say that. I said that. Not Gary, not John, but I said that because I love Gary and I love what he puts out. And if you want to hear more interesting guests with depth and knowledge that can help you grow your business, go ahead and check those out on circuitloops.com or wherever you consume your podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.